Just a look at the state of this road. Potholes everywhere. Honestly, British roads are starting to have more in common with Swiss cheese than tarmac. You've got to have your wits about you if you're on a motorbike riding in the UK. It seems like we used to ride on the left of the road. Now we ride on what's left of the road. Anyway, welcome to CG Rides. And today you find me out on my BMW R1250 RS. And as you've noticed from the title of the video, I want to talk about the problem with big touring bikes like this. And I need to apply a little caveat to everything I'm about to say. And that is that this bike is absolutely phenomenal for touring. It is without doubt one of the most comfortable, well-equipped bikes that you could ever hope to go touring on. It rides well, it handles well, considering its enormous size. And that's really what I want to talk about, is the weight of a bike like this. I stupidly, before recording this video, did not actually check the specs, but I think we're knocking on the door of about 300 kilos, but what I'll do is I'll put the actual weights up on the screen. And it's fair to say that you don't feel that mass when you're riding the bike. It's mainly when you're stopped or manoeuvring the bike or putting it on the centre stand. It's those kind of things. Provided that is that you have the strength to manage a bike like this. Now, I've lost a lot of weight for health reasons, and I am probably a good 15% down on the size I was when I bought this bike. And you need to think about weights in terms of the proportionality of it. So because my mass has decreased, proportionally the mass of the bike compared to me has increased. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm not the most scientific person in the world, but that makes sense to me. And what I'm finding is this bike is becoming harder to handle since I lost that weight. So I did a tour in France and Spain last year, which the episodes are still slowly dribbling up onto the channel. And I didn't have any issues at all with the bike. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the comfort and all the toys and the luggage space. It was just brilliant. We did loads of mountain roads and lots of tight hairpins, lots of very tight roads. We got absolutely soaked in a massive storm, and whilst riding on some fairly nadgery roads, and I didn't have any problem. There was even a road in Spain that we took that we shouldn't have taken, and we ended up doing a good 20 miles or so on an unpaved surface. And again, no problems at all. Then I came back home, and pulling out of a fuel station, I had to do an emergency stop. It was on a camber, and I ended up dropping the bike. I've done a video about that if you want to see what the inside of a boxer engine looks like. Have a look on the channel. And I think that has unnerved me a little bit, if I'm honest. The dropping of the bike and the fact it's so expensive. I mean, fortunately I didn't have the panniers on the side, but it still damaged the top box, it damaged the mirror, damaged the engine casing, so it was quite an expensive drop, even though I managed to get a good deal on some of the bits. A drop on a bike like this can easily run you £1,000 just in replacing scratch parts. And so then you're thinking, well, I need to put bars on it, right? But then that adds to the weight, which comes back to the problem. So what I'm noticing is when I ride the bike, I'm already a little bit nervous at lower speeds. Nervous is probably the wrong word. I'm not nervous of riding. It's just I'm always conscious that the slightest mistake, and if this bike goes past its centre of gravity, there's no way you're holding on to it. And not unless you want to do yourself a severe injury. You've just got to let it go. And the thought of doing it again is, doesn't appeal. And I think the way this bike carries its weight, because there's so much fairing, there's an expanse of fairing, and it must weigh a lot. So you do notice that on the top of the bike, I would say, again, you don't notice it so much when you're riding because of the telelever, I think it's telelever suspension. It does have a pair of forks, but there's a separate shock absorber on a lever, so the bike doesn't dive when you brake, and that's absolutely brilliant when you're taking pillions, I've got to say. I say pillions in plural, like I load up the bike with multiple people. I mean and pillion, of course. I'm just riding through the little market town of Axminster here in Devon. Sweet little place. And it was supposed to be brilliant sunshine today. I checked the weather forecast last night, obviously, where it said it was going to be sunny. And less than 12 hours later, it's wrong, of course. That's fairly normal, it would seem. And I'm a little bit shy on fuel, so I'm just going to stop and get some fuel, and then we'll carry on talking about the problem with big touring bikes. There we go, trusty Tesco, pay at pump, don't have to go inside, don't have to take your helmet off. Ideal. And I'm going to put the merest smidge of fuel into this bike, and I'll explain why that is in a moment. As always, printer is out of service. Seems like they never replace the receipt paper in these pumps. There we go, a whole 2 litres, which I reckon is probably good for about 20 miles. It's such a tiny amount of fuel that I put in that it hasn't even registered on the fuel gauge, or the remaining range still says 54 miles, but my plan is to get to my destination with minimal amounts of fuel left in the bike, for reasons that will become clear in a moment. Let's get back to talking about the problem with these bikes. Having just waxed lyrical about how good a bike like this is, I find myself in the position where, because of the weight loss, which also includes muscle loss, I'm definitely not as strong as I was, and I'm finding this bike harder to manage. It's particularly when I'm getting it off the centre stand, that takes quite a heave, manoeuvring it out of my garage, and holding it up whilst a pillion climbs onto the back and at low speeds does require upper body strength. And something else that I've noticed, I went on a ride recently. Actually, we went and did mini motos, which is an interesting experience. I'll have to do a separate video about that. Yeah, I managed to fall off, didn't hurt myself too badly, but it is definitely way more dangerous than karting. I will say that, mini motos. And you need to be sort of able to do some human origami with yourself, just to sit on the things. I've digressed again. We went on this ride, and I was with a friend of mine and his son. He's riding an R1, his son's on an R3, and they were pressing on a little bit on the way home, still within legal limits, but just pressing on these B roads, country lanes, again trying to dodge the potholes. We tried to map out where they all were on the way up, and then took the same route back so that we could speed up on the way home, which is kind of what you have to do now to keep yourself safe. It was a good job we did that, because there was a whole load of gravel just dumped on the road. Anyway, trying to keep up with these guys on this bike, possible, but difficult. I was following the chap on the R3, and that is a very light bike, and it's got plenty of go in it. It really surprises me actually how quick it will go. And through the bends, very difficult to keep up with him. It's so light, he's just flicking it around these bends, and then I'm on this 300 kilo monster trying to wrestle it around these corners, and there's no getting around the laws of physics, is there? This is a heavy bike, it's got momentum. When you get to a corner, it wants to go straight on, because that's where the momentum's going to take it, so you've got to muscle the bike over. And And what I mean by that is, if you're not familiar with biking, is using counter steering. And the way this works is, if I want to turn left, I kind of turn right first. So I just push on the left bar. If I do it now, just a gentle push on the left bar, and you'll see the bike immediately goes into a lean. And that's because as the front wheel turns slightly, the bike can pivot on. I'm not explaining myself very well, but the bike pivots over to the left. So you're not steering right to go left. Obviously you steer left to go left, but you just nudge the bars right in the opposite direction first of all, and what that does is drops the bike into a lean, and then the front wheel will come round on itself and you can take the turn. So that's what counter steering is, and you all do it. If you ride a push bike, a bicycle, if you ride a motorcycle, you're doing it, whether you realise it or not. That's the way it works. If you can kind of move that process into the conscious part of your mind, you can be more proactive with your riding. It'll give you much more confidence, and you're able to push a big heavy bike like this through turns. But the bike weighs something, it has mass, so pushing those bars and then holding it, so you're holding the bars to keep it in the lean. It's not like a sports bike. This bike just doesn't handle like that. You do need to keep hold of it, basically. So you're muscling the bike around, and as you go through these corners, what's happening then is you're using your muscles across the top of your back to hold the bike in the bends. And what I found when I did a recent trip to Spain, it was in April. We just did a few days down there, and it was absolutely fantastic. I didn't take the cameras on that trip on the basis that I still hadn't finished editing all of last year's trip, and those aren't exactly super popular videos anyway, so they've not been top priority because I've been so busy and I've had other things going on in my life, as you might imagine from the whole weight loss malarkey. So on that trip in Spain, we're doing a lot of, again, tight hairpins, mountain roads, and my back is starting to hurt, and I couldn't figure out what it was. I thought to myself, maybe it's because I'm slouching to get behind this enormous screen that I've got in front of me, and I've got this on its maximum setting, but I'm 6'1" or 185 centimeters, and I'm sat just above in the wind blast, so I do have a tendency to kind of slouch down like this to get out of it, particularly if it's cold, if you're on the motorway, that kind of thing. And I suspect that has something to do with the back pain I'm experiencing, so I probably need a taller screen or a deflector on top of the screen. But it was that ride following my friends on their sports bikes that really made me realise what the problem was. It's just little by little, as you're going through all of these tight bends, wrestling the bike just has a cumulative effect. So for me, I've got an issue with my back anyway, and it just exacerbates that. So I'm ending up with this back pain that I just can't seem to shift. And every time I get on the bike, my back starts hurting. I've been riding this morning for all of 20 minutes, and my back is already starting to ache a bit. And this did not happen when I first bought the bike, so I can only put it down to those things. But there are some other issues, I think, with having a big touring bike, and that is you can't go adventuring in quite the same way. You're always worried about the enormous bike and the shiny panniers. You don't want to scratch them, and it's big, and you don't know where you're going sometimes. You don't know what you're going to be up against. Are you going to end up with a gravel car park with an odd camber or a slope to deal with? You really do need to think ahead when you're parking up the bike. Even if you park it on a slight downhill, how you get in the bike back out again. And sometimes you're so distracted by being in a new place, and there might be beautiful scenery to look at, you maybe forget about these things, and you end up parking up the bike. And whereas with a lighter bike it wouldn't be a problem, on something like this it does become a problem. And if you go a size up, if you go for the K1600 touring bike or something like a Goldwing, well then you've got a reverse gear. So it just, as far as I'm aware, it just runs the starter motor in reverse, and so you can walk the bike backwards. I think that's how it works. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong now. something like that on this bike would be useful. But as far as I'm aware, that's not yet an option on the RT. But they continue to get bigger, possibly heavier. Don't know how the newer models compare to this one. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, I would say. And when you're out on a tour, a lighter bike just does open up more opportunities to you, particularly if you're on tight mountain roads and you want to head off and do some exploring, which we did in Spain. We did end up on a closed road because the mountain pass just wasn't doable on motorbikes at that time of year, and there was police there who turned us around. So obviously it was a common thing that they would post some people there to stop bikers from going over. And just turning the bike around, again, you've got to find the right space. It's always a challenge when you're on a big bike. And you can take away all of those headaches with a smaller bike. And we all think that we need the massive power. I mean, this 1250 engine on this bike is ludicrous. If you were to get the sportier version, the RS rather than the RT, in terms of real world pace on roads, I don't think there are many bikes that keep up with it, because it just has endless torque. Obviously the weight of this bike takes the edge off of that a little bit, but it's still a potent engine with way more power than you need. Even going 2 up, you don't need as much power as this. Now, prior to this bike I had a V850 TT, and that has significantly less power and torque than one of these bikes, and I rode that 2 up and did quite a lot of trips on it, and I never at any point thought this is underpowered. And I think part of that is when you're touring, you're in new places, so you don't tend to go as quick because you don't know the roads, and there are things to look at, like this beautiful scenery here near where I live. Phenomenal. On a sunny day, this view out across the valley here is amazing. And sometimes you want to take it easy. You want to just bimble along like I am now and enjoy and soak up the scenery. You don't need a massive engine to do that. And if I've got my wife on the back, there's no way I'm going to be hooning the bike around through the twisties. I just don't need as much power. Long and short of it is, I think these bikes are well suited to road touring. If you're going to be doing some motorway miles, an RT is the way to go. There's a good reason why they're used by the police, by the medical services. These Boxer engines are super reliable, and a big comfortable bike like this that you can carry plenty of stuff on is fantastic. But for me, with my current issues, it's just a non-starter. I can't have a bike that I don't want to ride because I'm too concerned about dropping it, because I just don't have the strength, or knowing that every ride I take I'm going to get off at the other end feeling a bit second-hand. That just takes the joy out of biking and makes me not want to ride the bike. A touring bike is precisely for that. I want to do longer journeys on it. But that doesn't mean that I don't want to use that storage capacity for, say, commuting to work. But I wouldn't consider doing that on this bike because it's just too big and heavy. Getting it out of the garage just to go 20 miles down the road, because I know I'm going to be in pain, I don't want to do it. And that's the problem for me with a big touring bike. Now, if you're bigger than me and much less of a wuss than me, then none of these things will apply to you. But you might still give consideration to that heavy road bias and fast road bias that an RT has, or any big touring bike has. And there will be times if you're touring, especially if you're going into other, well, I was about to say if you're going into other countries, you never know what the roads are going to be like. Well, same case in the UK now, but regardless, if you're going on a trip, you don't know what you're going to expect. An adventure style bike is perhaps more versatile and you might enjoy the trip more. It's less about the bike and more about the journey. It's about enjoying the scenery, exploring new places, and being able to take a bit of luggage with you so that you can stay over and extend that journey and visit places that you don't normally visit. And And I would say for most people, that's what a touring bike needs to be. And if you've only got one bike, then an adventure bike ticks all of those boxes, but at the same time they've got enough enjoyment on the fast roads that it could be your one and only bike, more versatile. But the thought of having something like an RT as your one and only bike, unless you're a bit more burly than me and you can handle it, then I don't personally think it works quite so well. So, utterly fantastic bike that I really love, but I'm in a situation where it's got to go. Because I want to do some trips with my wife. In fact, we're supposed to be going into Cornwall later today for a few days. And I want to do it in comfort, and I want to get to the other end without having a bad back. I'm not confident that will happen with this bike. So for all of those reasons, I've been umming and ahhing over this for 3 months now. But it just got to the point where it's like, I just have to change it for something else. And that's what this trip is about. I'm going to pick up a new bike. And what I decided to buy is the baby GS. I did look at a V100 Mandello, and that's what my heart wanted. But I couldn't stretch to a new one. So I'm very much trying to get the best deal I can, and I haven't got a particularly great deal, if I'm honest. And I've had to put a little bit of money in on top of it to get what I want. But there was no way I could have stretched to the V100 or the Stelvio, which I think I would have really liked, the Moto Guzzi Stelvio. So I did think about a V85 again, because I enjoyed that bike. But it feels a little bit sort of like a step backwards to go back to the same bike you've already had. And I don't like the colours on the current crop. And I don't want to go and buy a used one, because I had one that was used, so I would want a new one if that was the case. And the new colours don't appeal, so that was out of the question. So I went to the Triumph dealership. I decided I was going to go for a Tiger 900, probably a Tiger 900 Pro, a used one. And I went to a large dealership, I'm not going to name them, and they, not interested at all, took all my details, in fact, at the end of the conversation, and have never tried contacting me since, so they clearly weren't interested in selling me a bike. But the biggest problem was they didn't want to take this one. They would have just sold it to a third party, which meant I was going to get a crummy offer, and they wouldn't even give me a price on the trade-in, which just seems daft to me. So I went to another Triumph dealer of good repute, a place where I've actually bought two bikes from them in the past, one used one and one new one. So I know them and trust them. And the guy did give me an offer on the bike, but it wasn't very favourable. And he explained the reason is because if you go on eBay and look at these bikes, which is what the dealers are now doing, they're not looking at Glass's Guide or the Green Book or whatever they call it for the trade prices. Because if you do, this bike was about £3 more than he was offering me. But the problem is, people aren't buying them. People are buying adventure bikes. So that's a double-edged sword. For me, that's really bad news, because it means none of the dealers want to give me a decent price. For buyers who particularly want an RT, great news. You're going to get a lot more for your money. Anyway, I then started thinking about a BMW again. I do like BMWs, and I like all of the switchgear. I got this sat-nav, which is actually a Garmin Zumo XT. It's not the BMW Navigator, and I've got this like 3D printed mount, so it goes in the slot. And I'm thinking, if I get another BMW with the same mount, I could swap my sat-nav over, that's good. And it's like, which bike do I go for? If I go and get a big GS, yes, it will be lighter than this bike, but I've got a lot of the same problems. So I'm thinking, what about the lighter version? And then I looked on the website, I looked at the 900 GS, and I thought that looks really good. But again, it's a new bike, and by the time you put your luggage on and spec it up, it just gets to a really expensive amount that I couldn't justify that. And what's the chances of finding a new one when they're so recent to the market? So I thought, well, I'll look around and see what's available used. And the dealership in Exeter had an F850 GS. So that's the previous model. It's a 2023 bike, and it's the trophy edition. So it's got all of the goodies on it. So it has the electronic suspension adjustment, the lean angle sensors, all the electronics. It's got the TFT, which this bike doesn't have. So it's got the phone integration for nav and other bits and bobs as well. So it seems like a good bike. I really like the look of it. I like the colour combo. The only thing I'm not as keen on is the very thin front wheel. I mean, it is quite a thin bike because it's a smaller bike and it's lighter. But I went down about 3 weeks ago now, and I did a test ride on this bike, and I just immediately, the manoeuvrability from those wide bars, the seating position, the comfort. This one's got a comfort seat on it as well. It's very nicely spec'd. It's only got 2,500 miles on it or something. It rode really well. So I thought, yeah, that might be an option. And I think it saves something like 70 kilos over this bike. And that's a whole decent-sized adult male in terms of weight difference. And that's going to make a huge difference to how I feel when I'm riding. And this flipping backache, which is just getting worse and worse as I'm riding along today. So hopefully that's the solution to the problem. When it came to doing the deal, again, the dealership was not going to offer me very much for my bike, and saying that they're not selling for much. So I am taking a big hit on this compared to what I paid for it just 18 months ago, and it's been making me quite agitated thinking about what I've lost. In addition to that, so I had to put a bit of extra money in to just do the swap, not very much, but a little bit, and the new bike doesn't come with any luggage, so I had to buy luggage for it, which I was prepared to do. I recognised that was going to be a possibility when I was looking at Mandello's, but that all adds to the price, obviously, so I had to raid the piggy bank and make the change and just try and suck it up, because at the end of the day this bike is no good to me anymore. I just can't ride it with the way things are with my physical strength. I'm hoping that will change in the next year or two, but at the moment it's not, and I can't just have a bike sat in the garage doing nothing. I'd rather just take the hit on it and have a bike that I can actually enjoy. So I'm trying to just think about the enjoyment factor that I'm going to get from the new bike. It's got almost all of the toys that this bike has got, I think, with the exception of heated seat. That's the only thing I'm missing. It just, yeah, it looks good. It's going to be much lighter. I think I've made the right decision. It's probably too late now to do anything else. It's a nice looking bike. Now, because I did this deal like 3 weeks ago, because of my schedule, I've just not been available to pick up the bike. They did offer it to me a week previous to this, but I was away and I couldn't do it. So this bike's been sat in the garage, and it's horrible. You might have experienced this when you've agreed to sell a bike or a car or part exit, and then it's sat around and you're just thinking, I hope no one scratches it, moving stuff around in the garage, and then it comes to your last ride and you're thinking, this will be the ride where some idiot pulls out in front of me and I end up dropping it again. So you're just always feeling nervous and anxious about it. And of course, I have got a warning light on, which you may have noticed on the dash, because the headlight has decided to give up. So one thing actually with this bike, I didn't do quite enough research when I bought it, because I did this on mail order like an idiot. And it doesn't have the LED headlights. It's got an ordinary bulb, so it doesn't look as good as the bikes with the LED headlights. And of course the bulbs blow. And I suspect it's really easy to change the bulb, but I'm thinking they gave me such a crummy deal on this. I'm not doing anything. They could do that themselves. I wouldn't put it past them to try and charge me for the price of a bulb. Anyway, I am on the outskirts of Exeter now, So I'm going to fight my way through the morning traffic, get round to the other side of Exeter to get to the dealership, and I will show you the new bike. But of course you guys don't have to wait or fight for any traffic, because by the powers of video editing, you're going to see it right now. And there she is, one F850 GS trophy. Sounds lovely, nice and clean. Really quite pleased, apart from these side cases. I was told they were going to be silver, or have silver front to them, not black. But there wasn't a problem. They're going to order up some silver panels for me and swap them over. So that's all good. Right, first ride. And it's so manoeuvrable. It's one of the things that I love about adventure bikes. You're sat more upright, you've got these wide bars, you've got loads of leverage. Bike sounds good, gotta say. Of course, I've set off without adjusting my mirrors. That's a bit of a fail. I'll just find somewhere to pull in. Now, something I did notice on the test ride with this bike, particularly coming off of the RT with its very strong brakes, is that this bike doesn't seem to have the same instant braking feel. It is a Brembo system, and it's got braided hoses as well, but it doesn't have that initial bite that you're expecting. And I was a little bit concerned about this, but I did watch a few reviews, and everyone was saying that you just get used to it within a fairly short amount of time, and just change the way you ride slightly to accommodate it. I don't think it's a problem that the brakes don't work. Obviously they do. In fact, on my test ride, someone pulled out in front of me, so I know they work. It's just that initial feeling is not quite. It's not very aggressive, but perhaps that's actually what you want on a bike that's designed to also do a bit of off-road. I've got to say, first impressions are very good. This is extremely comfortable. It's a comfortable riding position. The screen is adjustable, and I've got it in the higher setting. At least I think I have. Not electronically adjusted like on the RT. Don't quite get those same creature comforts. And obviously there's going to be more wind buffeting and everything else. I'm not sure that I'm worried about that. I don't think that's a problem at all. And I was going to say that the bike feels pretty responsive considering the engine size difference, but I've just noticed it's actually in rain mode for some reason. You probably already spotted that, so I'm going to have to just switch that, and I think I'm going to go for dynamic mode, because why wouldn't? And I think press this button on the right handlebar for that. We do. Road, dynamic, get in. This bike has various different modes, and the sales guy just told me that it links. So when I change to dynamic mode, it's also going to change the suspension into dynamic mode. You can change it separately if you want a more comfortable ride, but I think I'd like to try it in dynamic and see how we get on. I don't think it changes the power output, it's just the throttle response. And compared to the RT, of course, there's no hydraulic clutch here. This is a cable clutch. Just notice that. And I feel like this is rapidly turning into some kind of first impressions review video, which I don't want to do, because what we're talking about here is big touring bikes and the issue. And this is my solution to that, which is to change. And I think I'm going to be happy with what I've chosen. This bike feels like a quality machine. I don't feel like I'm stepping down in terms of quality because it's still BMW. And I've got the sat-nav mount. And I've noticed on some of these bikes the sat-nav mount ends up being down here, which I didn't like. But I do like this one up here, even if it does wobble around a bit. My Garmin with its adapter fits on just fine, so that's nice. But the TFT also has navigation built into it, so that's another option that I could look into. So yeah, it does feel like a premium bike. I don't feel like I'm missing out, and that helps with the whole financial aspect of it. I've traded a great bike that wasn't working for me for what is likely to be a great bike that will work for me, and I think you've just got to put the money out of your mind, because you're never going to get a great deal, are you? When you trade in your bike with a dealer and pick up something new, you're always going to take a hit on it, because they've got to make a profit, and rightly so. We want them to do that because we need them in place to help us service the bikes and to provide us with new bikes, and if they're not making any money, then they go out of business. So I'm perfectly happy with the dealer making a profit. I keep feeling like they've made rather too much profit off of my deal, but well, I expect some of that's just been damaged now because they supplied me with black cases. I mean, the guy did say they'd be silver, so one of the first things I said to him is, bike looks nice, but why is the luggage black? He says, well, that's just the way it comes on the 850. Right, okay, but you said it'd be silver. He's like, well, I thought it would be silver. Okay, but that's not what I bought, is it? I bought silver luggage, so this is a bit of a disappointment. To his credit, he just went straight away to the manager to see what he could do. And they tried a box from a 1250 GS, the same type of luggage, a Vario luggage, and it fitted straight on, no problem. So there's no reason why you can't have a silver top. It's just that apparently the BMW ordering system, the parts ordering system, doesn't give them the choice when ordering for the 850. It doesn't give them a choice of colour, despite the fact it's identical luggage, it would seem. And in fact, in the top box it's got speed ratings for all the different bikes, so it's obvious that the luggage is meant for all of the bikes. Same story with the RT, it's the same luggage as is on the K1600. And I remember actually when I dropped the bike, I actually ended up buying a K1600 top case part, the red bit that goes on the top of the top case. I couldn't find it for an RT for less than sort of 700 or 800 euros. In the end, I found one from a place in the Netherlands that had used the part number for a K1600 that was old. Like a 2016 bike or something that had the same colour. So to them it had been sat around on the shelf and is for this older bike, so they were selling it off cheap. I think I got it for less than 150 euros. But it's the same part and it all fits. So BMW obviously do something slightly weird with their parts numbers. Anyway, I've digressed multiple times in this video and it's going to be a little bit unfocused, so apologies for that. Hopefully you're enjoying this sort of little slice of life moment as I fix a problem. And it's a bit of a daft thing to find yourself suddenly in the situation where you can't ride the bike that you love and you've got to suck it up and change it for something else. But I think this is something that's maybe useful to remember if ever you're shopping for a bike. God, these brakes, that is going to take some getting used to. And lots of fork dive as well, as you'd expect, I suppose, on an adventure bike. So yeah, I'll bring some more videos on this bike. We'll do a proper first impressions review. So I'm actually planning to go on a trip today, going down to Cornwall for a few days, up with my wife. So we should have a fairly good opinion of what the bike is like by the end of that. So I'll do a first impressions review then. And later in the year we'll do a proper ownership review once I've done a few more trips and got used to it. I have to say, so far I'm gelling with the bike and enjoying it. I'm looking forward to the ride home and a ride down to Cornwall later. I'll probably end up being in the saddle of this bike for 4 or 5 hours today, which is great. That's what you want, isn't it, when you pick up a new bike. And the rain has stayed away so far, and latest look at the weather app says I might be in for some sunshine this afternoon, so all's well that ends well. I'm going to forget about the money and go and enjoy the machine and the experiences that it's going to allow me to enjoy. Wow, did you see that ahead? The red Golf almost crashed into the car. This is why you will be very cautious if you're going to overtake someone on the inside, because people aren't expecting it. Anyway, that's all from me today. Thanks for joining me for the journey. If you've got any thoughts on this issue of the big bikes, or have you suffered like this? Do you find it hard when you physically can't control a bike? Do you find bikes too tall for you, or what's your experience been like? And have you had some horror stories of having to change a bike because of health issues and losing a load of money like me? What do you think about adventure bikes? Lots to talk about. Look forward to reading your comments. As always, thanks for watching and supporting the channel. I'll see you again next time. CG Rides.